Anyways.
That's it.
Are you good with that
great.
or what?
I think it's
Or
great.
Are you unhappy with it?
I'm very happy with it.
I look in your eyes, I feel like I've disappointed you.
You have. That we didn't do this more often.
Oh, okay, good. That's what I like to hear.
All
I love
right,
you.
dude, you killed it. Love it, man. Hello, everybody. We are here in the fantastic new Ministry Center, obviously still under works, but we thought it'd be a really cool opportunity to just be inside the inner works and show you guys like a little sneak peek of what it's going to be like. So this is just one wing of the whole new office Ministry Center space that's being developed. So obviously we're still in the works. There might be some people walking around behind us, but we thought it'd be really great just to have you in on this with us. And we're excited. So we're in here. This is our first day kind of in the new space, and we moved in just this weekend. And we also have church planner Dave Morgan here with us, working alongside Village to plant a church in Wally.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yes,
and
sir.
One thing that's really on the heart of Dave and that we get to discuss, that I've been talking with him, I've gotten to know Dave over the last year, and man, he is so on board and so for the outliers, the underdogs, the people like people in the story, like the people that Jesus is hanging out with, like even Matthew, who's called the outcast. Yeah. So Dave, what is it? Why does your heart beat so strongly for these people? That you I mean, it's interesting that it's a story that your heart would, that you're interested in getting in their lives, but what is that about you?
Well, here's the thing, man. Like my story and my journey into ministry really emulates chapter 9, Matthew chapter 9. Like all I keep on going back to when I go to the marginalized, when I go out onto the street and talk to the homeless and gang members and drug dealers and fatherless and prostitutes, and I keep on remembering Jesus hanging out with the tax collectors. Yeah. And what was that like, man? Can I just imagine these Pharisees, these religious dudes of the day coming up to the window and looking in and going, what is this guy doing? Like Jesus spun culture. He spun religion. Yeah. And nobody knew what he was up to, man. And I think through that, it was pretty hard. Okay, stop that. You just ran now. Okay, thank you. Okay. So I'll just pick it up. Yeah, you see him peering in and you go, you start to question everything about you. You start to question everything about your religious views. Like you start to go, oh man, like, and I'm not advocating if you have a problem with drinking, you shouldn't be going into the bars. Right. But I mean, miraculously, I go into the bars and I meet with people and stuff like that. Like people, there's actual dialogue in our churches where people are like, I don't think it's safe to go into a bar, and you kind of judge people like on doing this stuff. And I'm like, is this even a conversation, man? Like, do we even read the Bible? Do we even understand what Jesus did? He hung out with the least of these. There he was sitting with the very ugly sinners. And then I question myself with that. I'm like, where am I? Right. Where am I? Where am I, Chris? Yeah. You know, and I go, and that gives me the plumb line to go, need to be like Jesus. Awesome. Dude, that's so great to hear. I would love for our groups to even discuss some of that. I mean, where's your desire? Have you been someone who has a tendency to shy away? Have you been someone who has a tendency to look in and say, hey, what are you doing hanging out with that? And just go and discuss the nuances. Why maybe you should? Why maybe you shouldn't? Is there some sort of balance between the two? Or like Dave, are you maybe being called to go into Wally with this guy when he plants his church we need you.
And actually make an impact with some of these outliers and underdogs like we see in Matthew 9? One of the things we talked about and we heard Marco talk about was that how God chooses unlikely people for something, for his calling, whatever it is, right? I mean, we see Matthew here being called out of being a tax collector, which we saw and learned about was something that was, people didn't respect them, people didn't want them, people didn't think they were good people, they were shady, there's other things going on. I mean, do you have any experience in your life? I mean, people know your story, we've heard it a couple times, we got the podcast coming out to talk about it too, but like, from your experience, God does choose unlikely people and call them into this, doesn't he? Unlikely people, that's right. And I'm not about to like give you my laundry list of my story again. I mean, we've heard it so many times, right? Yeah. But if I was to pull something off the shelf, I'm reminded of my grade 3 class and how I was diagnosed with a learning disability, a cognitive processing disorder, and dyslexia. Yeah. And how crazy is it that God picks the most unlikely people? And today I teach people, like I speak fine, I can read, you know, like
God can do amazing things.
Was that something that God changed in you? Like, were you actually, was there a point in your life where you felt the switch where, hey, reading wasn't as difficult for you, teaching was something you can actually do, is by the Spirit, or how was that process like?
Yeah, I think it's in tandem with the Spirit. Like, there's still struggles, you know. I still have processing disorder. I'm still dyslexic, but I've learned tools, and I think it's been through God's inspiration and the Holy Spirit that I've been able to do that, and that's what He does. And I'm also reminded of a friend of mine, institutionalized his whole life, right? Gang member, drug dealer, debt collector, multiple girls pregnant, you know, like just such a broken guy. Found himself in a transitional home between jail and you know, trying to get back into real life. And he met with Jesus. I mean, the most unlikely guy, right?
Yeah.
And now he's serving Jesus, talking to people about Jesus, holding Bible studies at his house. Like, how crazy is that?
And okay, so people are called, it's out of nowhere, people who wouldn't be normal, you wouldn't think this is the prime candidate for ministry, right?
That's right.
But do you think that actually helps people? Like, is there something about people being, you know, not from a religious background, that actually helps other people relate to the faith and understand that the gospel is for everyone, that it's not just for exclusive
Yeah,
people?
for sure. I think Jesus, and we see it in Matthew 9, he's about the underdog. Right? Yeah. There's something special about the underdog. And man, if we as a Christian culture shut down to that, we're going to miss the very acts that Christ did. And we can have a joy to be part of as well, right? Like, He loves the underdog, man. And that's all through the Bible, right? The least of these, the marginalized. The ones that you don't think, He calls those to do something great and amazing on this earth.
Yeah, man. I remember even when I was feeling called into ministry, when things started going that way, I had no expectation in my life to ever get into ministry. It wasn't something that I thought I'd be getting into, something that I'd want to do, or something that I anticipated being ready for. And yet when God clearly called me into it, it was something where it was absolutely what I had to do. And I saw how in my life, even in my areas of sin, where God had actually and has been using that for His glory. So it's this beautiful picture of Him taking this completely broken mess, this like, and I was a religious person, you know what I mean? I would have been one of those people who was overly religious, but a hypocrite in it. And I watched Him not only change my heart, but use the past circumstances that I was in to bring glory to Him in it. And it was just
so good.
It's been really cool to see that play out. So from an unlikely guy where I thought I was an unlikely candidate to another unlikely one, man, it's been pretty cool to see how God moves. Let's discuss some of those stories in our group, experiences you've had, and even how maybe things in your past have even helped to really be leveraged for the sake of the gospel and the message that Jesus brings. So, man, in Matthew, I mean, we see chapter 8, chapter 9. This is where we came from chapter 8. We're in the early stages of chapter 9. We see Jesus go to Matthew. He says 2 words. He says, follow me. Boom, that's it. Like, there's nothing else you have to do, just follow me. And we know Matthew's place as a tax collector. He has no social clout. He has no religious clout. I mean, he's seen as a tax collector, someone who's, like we were talking about the last segment there, like underdog, low end. People didn't like him. People didn't appreciate him. Last person you'd expect Jesus to be actually calling. And then yet in that, we actually see Jesus just come up to him and say, follow me. But then the chapter earlier, we see 2 people come up to him. We see a scribe and a disciple both go to him and say, hey, what does it take to follow you, right? And Jesus says a couple things like, foxes have holes, birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to rest his head, right? And then the other thing he says to the disciple, the ones he says, first let me go and bury my father. He says, follow me and leave the dead to bury their own dead. So it's almost like there's 2 things that are going on. Like he goes up to Matthew and it seems so simple. He says, follow me. That's it.
You hit the nail on the head, man. Right? It's simple, right? It is simple. All of this, following Jesus is a simple thing, yet it's so profound. Right? Because in that simple, like, come follow me, you have to lay down everything. You have to examine your heart. You have to evaluate what's important to you in that moment, and then you have to count the cost and go, am I doing this or am I not? And I think everybody gets to that precipice, right? And maybe there's some people here even listening are at that precipice, and it rubs against what our culture is saying. Strive for more, be the best, do all of it. And when Jesus says, "Call me," these simple words, "Come follow me," man, you have to evaluate, and the depth of that is huge, and we see that.
Yeah. So what do you think makes it so difficult, and what's the difference here? I mean, we see Matthew follow him, have these 2 simple words, and then we see these other 2 guys who have like this baggage that they need to get rid of.
Dude, they're holding on to it, right? They're holding on to the white picket fence. They're holding on to the American dream.
Yeah.
I mean, I know we're in Canada, but
these guys were Jewish, but that's okay.
They were Jewish, right? But you know, they're holding on to something that isn't reality. And in that moment, Jesus is saying, look at me, guys. I'm reality.
Yeah.
It's that simple. I'm truth. I'm life. Follow me.
And do you ever struggle with that? The comfort, the things that you like, you know, being in a culture
100%.
like this where it's like maybe it'd be easier to be comfortable. Maybe it'd be easier to not go and plant.
Bro, we live in North America where you just look and you see your neighbor's Maserati and you go down the road and you see a big house.
Yeah.
Like, it is a struggle. But then it goes back to seeing souls saved and making Jesus famous, right? And you go, man, I'm going to count the cost. My wife and I and kids are moving into Wally.
Yeah.
Like, my mother and father-in-law are like, what are you doing? Like that, you're going backwards.
Yeah.
And sometimes, just like Matthew, just like these other guys, it looked like they were going backwards to the culture that they were at, but they were actually moving forward.